Warplanes, explosions, and millions of victims are not the consequences of war, but of a scientist's failed experience with the seeds from that very Garden of Eden. What will the plant of Eden eventually bring to Earth, purification and grace, or total destruction? Dr. Frame's private laboratory. After lighting a cigarette, the scientist releases a stream of smoke on the leaves of an unknown plant, and the results are astounding. The flower seems to suck in all the toxins, purifying the air perfectly. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of town, a Fed and a loser from Story Frame's lab are getting ready to meet, followed by a pair of environmentalists, Kate and Joe. Confident that today they will catch those dumping contaminated waste, the young men film what's going on, and quickly realize that something strange is going to happen here. The Fed shows Kyle a suitcase full of money, after which the guy makes a cut in the palm of his hand and applies a plant to it. In a second there's no trace of the wound, and the stricken agent asks him to hurry up and give him the cherished seeds. The deal falls apart. Noticing Joe and Kate, the agent is convinced that Kyle wanted to screw him and he is going to liquidate the loser. This causes the flask of seed to fall out of the man's hands. The large seed instantly opens the hull, releasing roots underground, and in a couple of seconds, giant, living roots rise into the territory. Dr. Jocelyn Stein is enthusiastically scouring the sand for more artifacts, not realizing that it won't be long before they come for her. But for now, back to Kate and Joe, who have managed to get far away from the sprouting site, but even so, the green shoots are catching up to them, splitting the asphalt. What is happening is reported to the old professor, and he realizes that disaster is coming. The seeds weren't ready for the open environment. The Feds take Dr. Stein away, telling her along the way what's going on. The agent asks the girl to remember the last time she had contact with Frame, and Jocelyn assures her that it was a long time ago. They were searching together for plant seeds from the Garden of Eden. But when she found the urn, the old man assured her that nothing was there. Joe gets caught up in a traffic jam and he rushes to warn people of the danger, but it turns out to be too late. The giant roots are spreading at great speed, destroying the track beneath the cars, and the guy barely has time to swerve before he is underground. Once at the secret headquarters, Stein sees satellite footage showing the roots growing for hundreds of kilometers, destroying everything in their path, and she realizes that the professor has deceived her. He managed to grow the Eden plant, but the doctor has lost control over it. The agents realize that soon the roots will reach the cities and they won't have time to evacuate everyone, so there is only one option to save people: to destroy the roots. In the meantime, Kate and Joe arrive at their buddy's house to run Kyle's license plate number and find out where the guy brought the seed to the meeting place. The FBI suggests blowing up the roots, but Jocelyn warned that this could make things worse. More new shoots could grow in place of the broken roots. Seconds before disaster strikes, an old programmer finds the address to which Kyle's car is registered. The company goes there, but Joe and Kate don't get there in time to rescue their friend, and he falls through the root crack. By this point, the Feds are already lifting military fighter jets into the sky, deciding to take their chances and hit the roots after all, and a missile flies right over the young men's heads. The command sees that the attack did not do any good, and the commander asks to repeat the launch. But the roots are not going to give up. On the contrary, they raise their huge tentacles in the sky, shooting down the planes right in the air. Stein asks the command to stop the bombing, but no one listens to the scientist until the last plane disappears in front of everyone. Finally, the commander has to admit defeat and declares what happens: a full evacuation. Frame sees intruders entering the lab, and he sends guards to deal with them. The roots are occupying more and more territory, splintering the ground, climbing over the fence. Joe risks falling through the rift, but suddenly the plant stops at the very gate to the lab. What happens forces Frame to figure out how he can stop the killer plant. To do so, he must stop the cells from growing, but he wouldn't want everyone to come to his garden looking for shelter. As she ponders, Jocelyn recalls words from the Bible, and it seems to her that the plant is aggressive because of pollution. In the girl's opinion, the extermination plan should be based on this. Looking at satellite images, Jocelyn discovers a place that the roots are bypassing, and she suggests that the agent fly there to find out the reason. The guy is a little hesitant, since the president orders them to evacuate to the mountains, but he decides to follow through nonetheless. Once inside the garden, Joe and Kate have to hide from the guards, who open fire without warning. The guy is wounded, but he refuses to leave until they learn the truth about the mysterious Garden of Eden-like place. Agent Jack learns from his partner that their agent had a meeting with Kyle the day before, and it's likely that the root started its growth from there. But for now, the Fed and Jocelyn fly to Frame's Garden of Eden to find out why the root hasn't touched it. Joe's strength runs out and he falls to the grass, but after a minute something amazing happens to him. From contact with the leaves, the boy's wound heals before his eyes. After picking up a few healing leaves, the pair continue on their way to find the lab faster. The roots come close to Lake Tahoe and the feds have to flee without waiting for the helicopter. But Agent Wilson can't get far either. The spies sneak into the lab and Kate films every item that can later prove the doctor's guilt. They also find a refrigerator with seeds and roots that are being experimented on. Frame almost discovers the intruders, but he is distracted by the sound of the machine, which shows the heartbeat of the root, and the scientist hurries to tell the others about it. This Kate also manages to film, and she ends up with hard evidence in her hands. Jocelyn and Jack argue about faith and science and what to do with the remaining seeds. The girl is convinced that with the right approach, a plant from the Garden of Eden can cleanse and restore the earth. But the Fed refuses to even discuss it. Anything they find will be destroyed, as it poses a threat. The old professor tells his buddy that he has managed to create a serum that will stop the growth of the roots, but they need to find the rod and move it to the lab to have it analyzed. After spotting Eden from the helicopter, Jocelyn is convinced that it is all the work of Frame, who has managed to modify the plants. Kate realizes that during the shooting, she lost her camera with all the evidence. The girl asks her boyfriend to go back, but he thinks it is too dangerous, especially as a helicopter begins circling over their heads. The helicopter also notices Dr. Frame. He orders the guards to make sure the car does not land. The guards open fire and the helicopter goes down, though by some miracle it manages to land with little shaking. Kate suggests that Joe take advantage of the moment, and while everyone is busy with the helicopter, find a camera and run away. The helicopter pilot dies, and the survivors Jocelyn and Jack escape to infiltrate the heart of the lab. Finding the bag, Kate sees that it is empty. The doctor's mercenaries have taken the camera and she has no evidence of what's going on. Meanwhile, the roots. Frame watches news reports that the roots will soon fill the world and millions of people will die. The aide also gives the old man Kate's camera. As she makes her way through the garden, Dr. Stein sees that the professor has indeed managed to restore many of the plants from the Garden of Eden. The girl guesses that there is something in the garden's soil that is keeping the roots from getting here, and she scoops up the soil to get it analyzed. But to do this and to produce the serum, Jocelyn needs equipment that only Frame has. Jack promises to help her and the pair decide to take their chances by sneaking in. On the way in, Jack and Jocelyn meet Kate and Joe. The young men have to make excuses for themselves, talking about how they're trying to save humanity. The couples decide to team up, as they have no other choice. Everything is covered in roots behind the garden fence and they should hurry. Frame reviews the camera footage, starting when Kyle decides to sell one of the seeds, which later began to sprout. The old man understands where to look for the taproot. Kate tells the same story to new acquaintances along the way, but they don't have time to decide what to do with this information. The professor's guard detains the company as they approach the lab. Jack opens fire and orders the others to run, while the Fed holds off the guards. The rest of the trio makes it to the lab and Jocelyn begins examining the ground. Her assumptions turn out to be correct. There is some substance in the soil that the plant is very afraid of, and it can be used to make a serum. Wasting no time, the girl begins to extract the substance by evaporating it on a gas burner. Meanwhile, Jack continues to fight the guards. Frame discovers that there is someone in his laboratory and he demands not to touch anything with his hands. Recognizing Jacqueline's voice, the old acquaintance assures her that he didn't mean a disaster. On the contrary, he dreams of creating a Garden of Eden everywhere. The old man asks Stein to let him in so they can work together, or else the roots will soon swallow the ocean and the whole world will be in danger. The professor's words convince Jocelyn and she opens the door. The girl tells Frame that she has extracted an antitoxin capable of destroying the root, but the old man lies to her that no one knows where the giant root rod is. Jack captures Noel and they join the others. After discussing their next steps, the company decides to proceed with action, first injecting the antitoxin and then opening fire on the root to leave no chance for it to recover. Old man Frame is summoned to fly the helicopter, but everyone becomes suspicious that the scientist is going to deceive them. In the meantime, the roots are destroying other states. The root, taking the lives of thousands of people, and from a bird's eye view the land is completely unrecognizable. Circling over the root's lair, the company tries to spot the rod, but it proves difficult. Frame spots an open area where they can land, and the company makes their way to the epicenter through an underground tunnel. Joe and Kate stay in the helicopter, monitoring for updates on the abnormal roots. The company finally finds the main root, which the scientists admire, but Jack reminds them that they must destroy it. Having made several bullet holes in the root, the Fed instructs Jocelyn to inject the serum and the procedure begins. The root proves too clever. It begins to regenerate as soon as the poison enters its ducts. Then Jack decides to start with an explosion, but Professor Frame manages to change his mind, and after taking his partners under his gun, he shoots the agent so he won't interfere with his study of the incredible plant. The old man forces Jocelyn to inject another serum into the root, which will merely put the plant to sleep, but instead Stein injects a syringe into his colleague's heart, and as Jack struggles to start the explosive timer, the partners get out into the light, where just now new sprouts of the root are raging. The pair manage to get out in time, and an explosion rumbles behind them. The giant root sinks and turns black, which means the plan worked. The monster plant is destroyed. Kate and Joe run over to their buddies and see that Jack is in bad shape. His injury is too serious, and the agent is dead. To save the guy, Joe pulls leaves of the plant out of the park, and in a minute there is not a trace of the wound on the agent's body. Back at the lab, Jocelyn continues to study the seeds and manages to change the plant's genes so that it becomes predictable and docile, retaining its healing properties. Together with Jack, they plant the ancient seeds, which immediately germinate and purify the earth, making it brighter and more fertile.